Greetings all, and welcome to the 5th episode of the V.T.P, or the Veteran Trainer's Perspective. Today, we are going to do something a little bit different, and admittedly, while this is something that I've always wanted to do, until now, I did not really have the ability to do it, until an opportunity presented itself. Today, as part of this episode, I am going to be reviewing Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu. I know that it's probably a bit late considering so many have already put out reviews of the games, but I wanted to really take the time to take a hard look at these games and see what they really bring to the table from the perspective of a veteran trainer like myself. I took the time to complete both games, defeated all of the master trainers in each game, and managed to form a competitive team for the games, so I've been quite busy to say the least. But in the end, it has all been worth it, and I am going to enjoy going into detail here as to why I think that, if you or someone you know has a Switch and you are looking to do some last-minute shopping, these games are definitely worth picking up for veterans and newcomers alike. But to make things blunt and short up front, these games are a breath of fresh air for the series, and I personally think that they are the next perfect step in taking the Pokémon franchise to a larger audience than ever before. I can divide my reasoning into several distinct categories in looking at the appearance and feel of the games, the mechanics at work that define them as Pokémon games, the way Pokémon in the games themselves are treated and presented, the way battles are designed, the implementation of Pokémon care in the games, and the way in which peripherals, and Pokémon Go in particular, are integrated into the games. Also, before we get started, I will be talking about the game's mechanics and story to some level of depth, so spoilers ahead. First of all, in talking about the aesthetics, we have to obviously talk about the graphics, and compared to the last two installments in the series, the graphics look fantastic. While the models in Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon were quite impressive, from my perspective, if you looked hard enough, you could definitely still see the pixels on screen. Here though, the models are perfectly designed to eliminate that issue and look flawless for the most part. Everything feels vibrant, colorful, and alive, even the most mundane of things like the grass on a route, and it felt like I was really in the console region for once, not just in a game world. It's not virtual reality, but for a Pokemon game, it's the closest we've ever gotten to experiencing the world in that fashion in a main series set of titles. And yes, to the doubters out there, these are main series titles, whether some people like it or not. The models used share a great deal of resemblance to the anime counterparts of the series, as pointed out by Gerard the Completionist. Shout out to him, by the way, I love his work as a fellow completionist. And that works great, since these games are built to be based off of Yellow, which itself was an altered version of the original set of Generation 1 games, meant to more closely follow the anime in its story and structure. The characters look charming and have just the right amount of appeal to them to make the experience feel fresh again, even if it's yet another trek through the console region for experienced players. Of course, in talking about the models, I have to give a special shout out to the fact that traveling Pokemon are a thing again. On the one hand, your starter will always travel with you on your head or shoulders, and will join a battle by leaping off in the most adorable way possible, even running back to you when they need to be recalled. On the other hand, you can now also have a buddy Pokemon travel with you outside of its ball, and not only does this look adorable and allow you to interact with them and visually build a stronger bond with your Pokemon, but it also serves two important purposes. For one thing, they may occasionally find berries and other items in bushes or hidden in the ground for you, so keeping an eye on them and seeing if they notice or go after something is paramount for a little bit of extra item hunting that adds a bit more fun to the gaming experience and forces you to pay close attention to them. Secondly, some specific species are actually rideable in different terrain, and while riding around on Pokemon like Snorlax and Onix on land, and Lapras and Gyarados in the water is nice, Pokemon like Charizard and Aerodactyl can also be ridden in the air, allowing you to encounter rare wild Pokemon flying above that might otherwise be out of reach normally. And seeing as this is the only way to encounter wild Pokemon like Charizard and Dragonite and even the legendary birds under specific conditions, it's a fun and welcome addition to the world as a whole. On that same note, the music for the games is wonderfully done. remixes of all the classic themes from the olden times of Pokemon gaming come alive in new ways, with even many of the routes having their own unique variation of similar themes to make each and every one of them come alive. The use of music in certain areas also helps to set the stage for everything as well. The best example I can think of is the rare encounters with special stationary Pokemon, like the legendaries and Snorlax. Normally, capture encounters have their own unique, pleasant, adventurous music track that is designed to have only light tension, like the tension coming from the excitement of encountering a new Pokemon for the first time. But in these stationary battles, what we get instead is a remix of the original Wild Pokemon encounter theme from Generation 1, and I always liked that theme because it was pulse-pounding and made every Wild Pokemon encounter feel like a serious fight, which makes some sense as these are the only encounters where you have to defeat the Pokemon first before you have a chance at capturing them. Here, the limited use of it in a remixed form makes it that much more important, really setting it up to signify that you are encountering something quite powerful, and will actually have to best it in battle before you can make it a part of your collection. I love that, and I see it as the equivalent of giving these encounters their own unique music like legendaries often get, which is kind of nice on its own, as the legendary birds and Mewtwo didn't get their own special theme until Generation 6 really, and even then, it kind of felt a bit too happy-go-lucky of a remix to me. I'd listen to the remix from these new games over that one any day. Now, past the aesthetics, let's take a look at how some of the core mechanics of the games in general differ from that of a traditional Pokemon game, as we can get into specifics on actual similarities and differences within Pokemon themselves and battle separately. For one thing, and one of the most basic differences, the old form of PC system has been completely replaced with a single, readily accessible pot of 1,000 Pokemon in your inventory. Now, 1,000 is a lot, to say the least, and this not only makes it a lot easier to store Pokemon in any way you wish without the limitation of box space, but more importantly, it's the perfect way for switching out team members on the fly, allowing you to more readily adapt to any situation on your adventure and have just the perfect Pokemon team ready to handle whatever challenges come before you. It also feeds quite well into the capture combo system implemented in the games for Wild Pokemon encounters, but I will get into more detail on that in a bit. Secondly, as a continuation of what was done in Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, HMs do not make a comeback at all, despite the games being remakes of Yellow. Instead, the moves that were once used as HMs, though still present in the game as actual moves, have been replaced with secret techniques that your partner Eevee or Pikachu can learn that allow them to manipulate the playing field on the overworld. They don't take up move slots and can be used at any time, even if your partner isn't actually in your battle party, making them extremely convenient to use. This also makes them a bit comical in some cases, such as an Eevee being able to learn a special technique that can allow it to cut down bushes or light up dark caverns. But this simplification makes it easier to play the games and eliminates the need to bring Pokemon used for HMs alone, freeing up party space so you have that much more freedom in choosing who you want to include as part of your team. Probably the biggest main change to the mechanics comes in the form of co-op play with another player. The major purpose of these games was to bring families together, to play together, and the co-op system implements this quite well in my opinion. This mainly impacts 3 areas. On the main overworld, by shaking a separate peripheral device, it is possible for a second player to appear on screen and move around, enabling them to interact with objects and Pokemon as they wish. In battle, this can allow players to call in a friend and effectively team up with the second Pokemon in their party's slots, putting 2 Pokemon against a single opponent in most cases to make the action move quicker and make certain battles easier. Though not all types of battles are compatible with this sort of function, the Master Trainer battles being an exception I will discuss in further detail later. In addition, when encountering wild Pokemon, having a second player can allow you to throw link throws that, while using up 2 balls instead of 1, can create a stronger capture, more likely to capture a wild Pokemon and gain more experience from them, giving an incentive to use this technique if you're trying to hunt down Pokemon that are noted for being very difficult to catch. With all of this said then, there is next the issue of difficulty to deal with, and, well, it's sort of all over the place, but in a way that makes sense with the mechanics of the games and their layout. Now, for a veteran Pokemon player of the series, it goes without saying that, yes, the way the games are designed does make them fairly easy to beat, once you get adjusted to the new battle and capture mechanics. It's even easier in co-op mode, as battles and capturing are made much easier, as I already highlighted. But while some might see this as detracting from the experience, I actually welcome it for the simple reason that they were designed with newcomers in mind. These games were made for newcomers to the series, namely those brought in by Pokemon Go, to have a crack at what traditional Pokemon gameplay is like while keeping some aspects of Go in place, namely the capturing system, and in particular, these are the kinds of games that are meant to bring families together, so both young and old alike can play and enjoy them together. For that reason, having the initial main game be a bit easier than normal is perfectly fine for me, and creates a more inviting experience for these groups of people. Even with this said though, the main game is not the whole game, as there is something to do in the post-game. While I will address this in its own section, it can be said that this post-game material will challenge players in ways they have never been challenged before, and are difficult enough to give even experienced trainers a run for their money, helping to appease both sides of the difficulty spectrum in turn. Now, let's talk about how the Pokemon themselves are different this time around. While the Pokédex is limited to just the original 151, plus Meltan and Melmetal, the way in which they are designed is one that still has roots in the way the series began with its mechanics, but at the same time incorporates elements from future generations to create a unique gameplay system and meta all of its own. For instance, one of the simpler but more crucial ways in which things were changed is the level of wild Pokemon in the games, as encountered on each step of your journey. Normally, the way it works is that the wild Pokemon you encounter are always at a significantly lower level than the Pokemon possessed by trainers that you battle, especially late in the game. The idea for this is that if you want to make use of a new teammate, you have to take the time to grind and raise them to a level where they are appropriate for whatever challenge comes before you, in turn helping to build a bond with them. However, this primarily worked in the main series games before this because you could simply battle against other wild Pokemon to slowly level them up until they got to an appropriate level. Because traditional battling only happens against trainers in these games, however, as I will cover shortly, catching Pokemon can be far more lucrative for earning experience. Something had to be done then to change this. To correct this, the developers made a simple change. Now, in the games, the wild Pokemon you encounter are at a much higher level than normal in almost every area. So once you get them, you don't have to do nearly as much grinding to get them to a level that allows them to stand a chance against other trainers. This cutting down of grinding is also far more appealing to those that are just getting into the series, as it makes the gameplay run smoother and is less frustrating and monotonous for newcomers, so this change makes plenty of sense. In addition to this, the movesets that are learned by Pokemon in the Let's Go games have been noticeably shifted in a way that simultaneously goes back to simpler Generation 1 roots, incorporates new moves, and helps to balance out almost every Pokemon in some way. First of all, compared to the extended move list present for the Pokemon here in Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, the move lists are much shorter. Many of the core moves established in the games thus far are not included in the games, the simpler movesets being a way of harkening back to the days of the original Red, Blue, Green, and Yellow, where Pokemon learned much fewer moves. At the same time, many of these moves are ones that have been introduced through generations past Generation 1, so there is much more move variety for experienced trainers to work with, helping to eliminate the issues of limited move versatility that plagued most Generation 1 Pokemon back in the day. I mean, come on. Pokemon like Rhyhorn and Rhydon not learning any stab moves naturally in Generation 1? What a waste of power. However, in addition to giving these Pokemon moves that help to grant them versatility beyond what Generation 1 alone could have provided, almost every single Pokemon in the Let's Go games has access to some moves that they were never able to learn before, granting them new methods of attack and strategies that help to make everyone a more balanced threat in the right circumstances. And this isn't just talking about the new TM list, which is also much smaller, but still incredibly diverse in its own right. The natural learned moves of Pokemon have been seriously upgraded, allowing them to manipulate others and incorporate new playing styles that can help to make them trickier to beat and master, and in turn, much more engaging to work with in battle. Another important change is that now, while IVs are still very much a thing in the games, EVs in the traditional sense are not. Instead, they have been replaced with a candy-based system where feeding certain types of candies to Pokemon can be used to increase their stats in that fashion. there are special candies used to upgrade each individual stat, with the numbers being needed changing every time they are used to increase the stat, and with some being large and only meant for higher level Pokemon to consume in order to keep things from becoming too easy for players initially. And then, there are Pokemon specific candies that can raise all the Pokemon stats by 1 when used, and are generally quite rare. These candies are primarily earned through capture combos, and while they might only give small increases with each boost, in total, the amount you can actually add to each stat of a Pokemon is incredible, and goes far beyond what traditional Eevees could ever provide to them, helping to provide a power crutch if your Pokemon are weaker and are in need of a stat boost in order to stand a chance against powerful opponents. Not all of the Pokemon in the games are the same as they once were either, for the starter Eevee and Pikachu you get in the games are different from normal specimens, namely in their stats. While wild Eevee and Pikachu do exist in the games, your starter actually has higher base stats than normal, with Eevee getting a solid boost to all of its stats, and Pikachu getting a noticeable boost to its offensive stats and especially its speed. This allows them to be of more use in the middle and later portions of the games, helping to compensate for the fact that they cannot be evolved in the games, and they are made even more effective by the fact that they can interact with special move tutors throughout the game to learn powerful and useful new moves that are exclusive to them and new games at this point. These new moves have a range of powerful side effects and can make life a living nightmare for some opponents, and to top it all off, they even have a special secret move that they can use under rare circumstances in battle that deals damage based on their happiness towards you, allowing them to make themselves a serious threat against even the strongest of opponents. And lastly, in talking about changes to the Pokemon themselves, because of certain features being eliminated for the sake of simplifying things and making the games more like the Generation 1 Yellow game that inspired their design, Mega Evolutions are handled very differently. For as long as you have a Pokemon's associated Mega Stone in your bag, you can activate Mega Evolution for them at any time. Granted, you are still limited to only being able to Mega Evolve one Pokemon at a time, but this still is a noteworthy change that can make them a bit more accessible, especially since some are given for free and the rest can be purchased for cheap from a guy in a Slowpoke outfit at the Indigo Plateau. Alright, now it's finally on to the part of the game that most are interested in understanding a bit more about. What major differences separate the way the game is played from its predecessors? The first and most obvious one is the way that Pokemon are encountered and captured in the game. Normally, players are used to just walking around in grass or other Pokemon spawning terrain and waiting for a random encounter. But in the Let's Go games, all Pokemon appear on the overworld first, and you can either choose to encounter them by making direct contact, or simply move around and away from them if you're not interested. Items like repels can still be used to lower the spawn rate of Pokemon, but there are equally so items called lures that can make the spawn rate increase, which is perfect if you're looking to encounter something specific or a rare Pokemon more quickly. When you encounter a wild Pokemon, instead of having to battle it, the catch mechanics are very similar to how things work in Pokemon Go, where you have to use the gyroscope controls in the Nintendo Switch's Joy-Cons and associated accessories to fling balls at Pokemon as a target appears on and around them. The smaller the circle is when you throw a ball at it, the better the throw you will make and the more likely you will be to actually capture the Pokemon, and the color of the circle indicates how difficult the Pokemon in front of you is to capture given the ball you're using and any other items you've used on it. And yes, that means, just like in Go, there are berry items that you can use on Pokemon before throwing a ball that can help hold them still, make it more likely that the throw will be a successful catch, or increase the chances of the Pokemon dropping items if captured by the next ball. And these berries come in 3 levels of effectiveness. Capture devices are limited to just the basic ones present in the original games, though Premier Balls do make a return as a special purchase buy in any Pokemon Mart, which themselves are now once again completely separate from Pokemon Centers. Alongside the traditional battle systems used for trainer battles in the games, as well as stationary wild Pokemon encounters, this gameplay, in my opinion, complements it, and effectively helps to merge the playstyles of traditional Pokemon games with that of Go to make an experience that is friendly to both player crowds. Now, in mentioning this catch system, it is also important to note the significance of capture combos in the games. In essence, when you catch the same species of Pokemon more than once in a row, you start up what is called a catch combo. The aim of the game with these catch combos is to catch as many of the same species of Pokemon as possible in a row, with you being awarded in various ways for it. The amount of experience you get from a catch is dependent upon a number of factors and multipliers, and one of the easiest ways to earn more experience than normal is to start these catch combos. Moreover, you are more likely to get rare items and more of them the higher the catch combo is, and every additional capture also increases the chances of a shiny Pokemon spawning on the overworld. And thankfully, unlike in Go, there is a noticeable sparkle and color difference in them on the overworld map that makes them easy to identify. Furthermore, catch combos affect the stats of wild Pokemon, as the higher the combo, the more likely it is that you will encounter Pokemon with perfect IVs. These bonuses top off at about 30 encounters, but you can still keep the combo going beyond that for greater rewards for good captures. Lastly, it is noted that high catch combos can be enough to cause the Pokemon you are comboing to appear more frequently, and can bring out rare Pokemon in an area that might not otherwise appear in the wild under normal circumstances, providing more than enough incentive to give capture combos a try and see what rare goodies can be salvaged from them. In terms of battling, it is noted that the affection system seen in Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon is still intact in these new games, so your Pokemon can be more likely to land critical hits, survive surefire KOs, and even dodge attacks more frequently if you spent more time battling and working with them. However, much of the other major aspects of advanced battling have been completely removed. For one thing, there are no abilities at all, just as it was back in the days of Generation 1. The same thing goes with held items no longer existing, as that was something that didn't become a thing until Generation 2. These two things alone change the way that battles work at a fundamental level, as while it does simplify their dynamics, it also forces a change in the strategies typically used with Pokemon, thus providing both a simplified battle system for new players and a modified battle system for veterans that forces them to get creative with their Pokemon in ways they never had to before, creating an exciting experience for both sides of the spectrum. And of course, we can't forget that, because it too was only established in Generation 2, there is no breeding in the games. So catch combos are really the only way to get access to good Pokemon in the games to train and develop. Some might see this as a way to force the game's new mechanics on others, but I see it more as an incentive to embrace them, and I can't say that I've really had any serious problems with that. Compared to the game that these entries are based off of, the post-game for the Let's Go games is both simple and fairly difficult to complete. Aside from opening up Cerulean Cave and other minor things, the end of the game sees the release of 153 special trainers into the overworld called Master Trainers, who present the ultimate challenge to players. Each of these trainers specializes in one species of Pokemon, one for each of the 153 Pokemon in the Pokédex, and it is the job of the player to best them with the same species of Pokemon without using any items. These challenges push one's experience with Pokemon to the limit, and offer the ultimate challenge to those that think they really know how to use Pokemon to their best ability. I can tell you firsthand that these fights are not easy in the slightest, as the Pokemon of these Master Trainers are all at ridiculously high levels, and they use tactics that truly make the most of the limited abilities and powers of each species of Pokemon, and will force you to use strategies that might otherwise seem unorthodox, but will be the best thing you can adopt in many cases to beat them at their own game. Some, like the Legendaries or Ditto, only require you to level up a specimen to level 90 or higher. But the rest? Prepare for some difficult battles that will really make you think about how you play the games, and while they might not do much but add titles to your online profile, they are still a mark of pride for any veteran trainer to earn. I think that this is a great way to extend the game, as while it might seem monotonous, it is definitely the challenge that hardcore players would be looking for in the games, and I think it serves very well as an easy way of making you appreciate every single Pokemon, even those with limited combat skills. Now, the game's mechanics are not all that is new, as there is the opportunity to play with and care for your starter Pokemon in the games. This option allows you to build a stronger personal bond with your partner by petting and rubbing them, and throughout the game you can have the chance to change how your starter looks, either by giving them a new hairstyle or by dressing them and yourself in cute matching outfits, helping to make them more endearing to you as a player. This does factor a bit into gameplay, as occasionally your starter will find rare items and give them to you as presents. While these items might ordinarily not have much use, they can pick up things like heart scales, which can be invaluable for some of the post-game Master Trainer battles. So, while it is a simple feature, it is still one that helps to make the games that much more charming, and really helps to build strong bonds between the player and the Pokémon they start their adventure with. The last thing I want to talk about are the peripherals that come with the games and the connection they have with Pokémon Go. Amongst the different things the games come with, there is the option of a special Pokeball controller that not only has a Mew inside to download for use in one of the games, but more importantly, allows you to carry one of your Pokémon from Let's Go around with you outside of the game, allowing them to get stronger and find items while out on a walk. This is a perfect complement to Pokémon Go, which the games share connectivity with, and helps to feed into the idea of really taking your Pokémon out on a walk with you. And speaking of Go, it's nice to see that you can actually transfer Pokémon from the app into the Let's Go games, and try your hand at capturing some Pokémon you might obtain while outside. I think that this is a perfect idea for those that are looking to really maximize their experience with both games. Moreover, this is also a great way to get families to play together, and for one simple reason: teamwork. Most young kids won't have a smartphone to play Go on, but they can still play the Switch games. Their parents, on the other hand, likely do have a smartphone and can play the game, so in this sense, they can then bring the two together to have fun and play together towards a common goal. This is also the secret behind obtaining Meltan in Pokémon Go, and by default Melmetal, so there is definitely an incentive to use the two platforms together to get the most out of the games, and I think that's a very clever way of going about it. As a whole, I can definitely say that Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu are very unique games in the series, and while some may see them as childish and not worth the money, I argue the contrary very strongly, and I firmly believe that this is truly the first step to a whole new experience in the world of Pokémon. Yes, it is true that the games have been simplified for the sake of a more general audience, but seeing as that was the point of them existing in the first place, I'm okay with this. And besides, if you are looking for a challenge, again, the post-game content can definitely help provide that. These games serve as a fantastic union between the casual gameplay of the Pokémon Go series and the hardcore series that many fans love, and I think that this is likely not the last time we will see this type of gameplay used in future titles. While the products are not always perfect in every way, for a first time, I think that the Let's Go games show that Game Freak and Nintendo are definitely looking to the future and desire to make gaming something that the whole family can enjoy. And with that, I would highly recommend that you pick up at least one of these games if you're still on the fence about them. It's definitely a charming experience that will help bring the world of Pokémon alive for you once more, and more than worth taking the time to check out, if only to prepare yourself for what likely lays in store for the future of the franchise as a whole. That's all for this review, so I look forward to seeing you all again on the next episode of the V.T.P. Thank you all for watching this video. It is always an honor to be able to speak with you all on the subject of Pokémon in a way that brings me great joy and happiness in my work. If you would like to keep tabs on past and future work, click that subscribe button, check out my work on DeviantArt, and don't be shy about following me on Twitter, where you can find pertinent announcements on upcoming work before it is officially posted. Links to both can be found in the video description. If you would like to support my work and help Miguel and I continue to produce more content for you and improve upon our presentation, please visit us at my Patreon page, which you can also find a link to in the video description. With that, I thank you for watching and I wish you well.